John Gotti was the most famous gangster since Al Capone.
His picture's on page 1 of newspapers. His name is all over TV. He's a headline figure.
He brutally murdered his way to become head of the most powerful crime family in America.
John Gotti took charge of what's called the Gambino crime family shortly after his reputed predecessor was gunned down.
Addicted to fame, he adored the attention of the world's media and became America's most high-profile criminal.
He was Moby Dick in the organized crime world. Everybody wanted to prosecute John Gotti.
In New York, the Gotti trial is the hottest show off Broadway.
He made a mockery of the law, time and again walking free from court.
I'm not saying he didn't do it. I simply had my doubts.
But overconfident and arrogant, he thought he could take on the might of the FBI.
Here was this guy, he had this come and get me attitude to law enforcement. He made fun of that.
But what he did didn't just spell his end, but the ruination of America's most powerful crime family. A Monday evening in December 1985, in central Manhattan, New York. At Sparks Steakhouse, Paul Castellano, one of the most powerful mobsters in New York, arrives for dinner, accompanied by his driver, Tommy Bellotti. 4 men are waiting for them. Across the street, 2 men watch the events from a parked car.
At least 3 gunmen in New York City tonight shot and killed a man identified by police as Paul Castellano, reputed chief of the Gambino Mafia family. That's the nation's most powerful organized crime organization.
Well, the king is dead. Paul Castellano, reputed boss of bosses, executed on a New York City street yesterday.
Surprising, though, was the man who masterminded the hit. John Gotti.
Gotti was just not a well-known or well-respected figure prior to the killing of Castellano.
I mean, his initial forte in organized crime was hijacking trucks and beating people up and killing people. He was a thug, in my view.
Gotti started his life in crime in the late 1950s as a low-level street thug. But he had big ambitions. He had his eye on joining the most profitable criminal organization in America.
Mob profits are going to top $100 billion this year.
Add to that, the inflated costs of consumer goods and services in the total bill is more than $77 for every American
every year.
And they're into everything from low-level street crimes to sophisticated white-collar crime.
Garbage carting, the piers, the garment industry.
Labor racketeering, and of course, murder.
In 1973, Gotti was given the opportunity to join the most powerful of the 5 mafia families in New York, the Gambinos.
Conservative estimates indicate that the Gambino family was making easily $400 to $500 million a year.
Head of the family was Don Carlo Gambino. His nephew had recently been kidnapped and murdered by members of the Irish mob. Gambino wanted revenge, and he offered Gotti his chance to make his bones in the Mafia.
Making your bones means you've proved your tutorship and that you are now ready for full-fledged membership as a maid or soldier in the family.
Gotti was part of the team that killed James McBratney in revenge for the kidnapping. He was sentenced to 7 years, but was out in less than 2. On his release, Gotti was richly rewarded. He was initiated into the Mafia and dramatically promoted straight to captain in charge of his own crew.
It's one of the most violent and ruthless crews in the Gambino family. And they're engaged in everything from truck hijackings to murders and loan sharking.
They were really crazy people. And hijackers really are very violent people. And that's what Gotti was.
By 1976, Gotti was a rising star in New York's most powerful crime organization.
You know, you can get pretty far in life if you're willing to shoot somebody who doesn't give you your way, right? That's a pretty significant advantage.
Then, a change at the head of the family would allow Gotti to aim for the highest prize of all. After 20 years at the head of the Gambino family, Carlo Gambino died. His brother-in-law, Paul Castellano, took charge. Castellano saw himself as more of a businessman than a street mobster, something that riled roughnecks like Gotti.
Paul was remote and sort of removed from the street people.
He didn't associate with his own members of organized crime. They felt he thought he was too important and too wealthy. They called him the Pope sometimes, or the man on the hill.
From his mansion on Staten Island, Castellano took a dim view of street crews like Gotti's and was cutting them out of the most profitable deals.
It was the kind of crew that Paul Castellano didn't really favor because they were looked upon as hard muscle guys, jaw breakers, knee breakers, but pea-brained.
He was a family of the haves and the have-nots. Castellano and all his side made all the money. The Gotti's crews are all struggling, just trying to earn enough money to get by.
Gotti began to nurture a growing hatred of Paul Castellano. But this factionalism within the family was not the only problem that the Gambinos were facing. The government was getting its act together and was planning to wage war on the Mafia. For years, the Mafia had prospered as only the low-level members would get convicted, whilst the top guys, the brains behind operations, always managed to keep their hands clean.
Very often, in a Darwinian sense, you took out the lame and the weak and you allowed the strong to survive.
The bosses, the underbosses, the consiglieri, even the capos, the captains, who ran the street units, they never pulled the trigger. They never really extorted directly money from anyone. They were on the receiving end, but they weren't on the working end.
But now, the FBI were going to target the top-ranking members and build new squads to take on each of the 5 New York families. Head of the Gambino squad was Bruce Mao.
When we started out in 1980, there's very little intelligence in the Gambino family, so we basically started from scratch.
Mao had to discover a way to break into an organization which operated by a strict code of silence.
When you investigate a crime family, you always look for a weak link and try to find some place where they're vulnerable, where somebody's talking. We like to find a gossip. And one of the first cases we opened was targeting against John Gotti.
John Gotti had a sidekick, a friend who went back to his teenage days named was Fat Angie, Angelo Ruggiero. Angie Ruggiero was intimately known as Quack Quack.
How do we guess?
He gossiped a lot. He liked to talk, he liked to blab.
In 1981, Mao's team got court permission to tap Angelo Ruggiero's phone and then bug his home. It wasn't long before the wires provided dramatic results.
During the Ruggiero wire, we realized that these guys were involved in major heroin activity. They were pushing approximately 50 kilos of heroin in a 6-month period here in New York.
Don't worry about nothing, all right? How about our friend over there? What time you be at, Pete?
The FBI arrested Angelo Ruggiero in 1983 on drugs charges, but not Gotti. They had nothing to link him directly to the crime.
We know John Gotti knew about it. We knew we got a piece of it, but he wasn't actually involved in the physical trafficking of the product itself.
But he wasn't off the hook yet. Although the Mafia profited from narcotics, many bosses, including Paul Castellano, made a rule officially banning their crews from dealing drugs on pain of death.
He had this edict, and it was very effective. He could use it whenever he wanted to get rid of somebody he didn't like if they got mixed up in narcotics.
Castellano now had the perfect excuse to rid himself of Gotti.
Castellano wasn't a big fan of John Gotti, Ruggiero, and they weren't like his fair-haired boys. So he definitely would have had him killed. And he had the manpower and the horsepower and the firepower to do it.
It was a kill or be killed situation.
Gotti realized he had to strike first. But the killing of a mob boss was no ordinary hit. The Mafia have strict rules. He would need permission from the heads of the other 4 New York families. But a lowly Mafia captain could easily be killed just for suggesting that he wanted to take out his boss.
Now, for the first time, Gotti, and this was unforeseen, showed strategic sense and unforeseen acumen.
Gotti gambled that the other bosses were tired of Castellano's high-handed manner and would be happy to see the back of him. His gamble paid off. Amazingly, 3 of the New York bosses gave the go-ahead for the upstart capo to take Castellano out. He now needed a hit team. In an audacious move, he approached his most powerful Gambino rival, wealthy Castellano loyalist, Sammy Gravano. He successfully enticed him to be his right-hand man. From his new recruits, Gotti discovered some crucial inside information.
Now, Castellano had become so overconfident. He'd been a boss for 10 years. There'd been no attempts against him. He felt immune. And he rode around only with one lieutenant, a guy by the name of Bellotti. And he was unarmed, no bodyguards.
They learned that Castellano was supposed to have dinner at a restaurant called Sparks Steakhouse on the night of December 16, 1985.
They knew the hour, they knew how he was going to arrive there.
And so they assembled their crew, their hit teams.
He devised a way of killing Castellano. And it really was a brilliant coup that he engineered.
Gotti worked out he could use the crowded streets as cover for the hitmen.
He had everybody dress in white trench coats and also wear Russian fur hats. And the idea was that everybody would look the same, so any passers-by on the street could not really make a solid identification.
In a final bold move, Gotti would be only feet away to oversee the execution. His new right-hand man, Sammy Gravano, would be sat beside him. What happened next would change the Mafia forever.
Frank Chico stands up and says, "I nominate John Gotti to be the next boss of the Gambino family." Of course, Gotti sitting there as one of the captains. John was elected the boss of the Gambino family. This is in January of 1986.
John Gotti took charge of what's called the Gambino crime family shortly after his reputed predecessor was gunned down.
And the man that succeeded him, or is believed to have succeeded him, is a man by the name of John Gotti.
So you think he's behind this?
Well, certainly I would think he heads the enforcement arm of the Gambino family, and certainly they'd have to consult with him.
Until now, the Mafia had been a secret society exerting its power from the shadows.
A traditional mob boss looked to be under the radar. They wanted to control their criminal activities through intermediaries. They did not want to be seen as a powerful individual who could be targeted by law enforcement. Gotti was precisely the opposite.
Gotti attracted attention in a way no other boss had ever done.
Immediately after becoming the boss of the Gambino family, his whole exterior changed. Previously, he wore windbreakers, black t-shirts. He had the jewelry of a two-bit mafioso. Suddenly, overnight, he switches. He's now wearing tailored suits, cashmere coats, even monogrammed socks. I mean, he went to great lengths to have this appearance of being an emperor.
45 years old, Gotti has become quickly recognizable, if only for his custom-made suits and his frequent stops at the Stylorama hair salon.
He's got very good taste. He likes his hair extremely perfect. He's such a gentleman that, you really, you can't believe it.
He was also a big-time gambler, sometimes flashing as much as $100,000 in a weekend.
Gotti loved the limelight. He talked about it all the time, he had his public. He didn't mind being stared at in restaurants. He boasted how important he was. He was a megalomaniac.
The press nicknamed him the Dapper Don. But for all the fancy suits, Gotti was a street mobster, and he couldn't shake free from his past. Even as he ascended to the throne of the Gambino family, Gotti was awaiting trial on an assault charge. In 1984, nearly 2 years earlier, he had attacked Romuald Pajsek, a refrigerator salesman from Queens, in an absurd incident.
That was a traffic dispute. It was about a parking space. And John Gotti slapped Romuald Pajsek in the face.
And they also stole about $300 from him.
Pajsek didn't know who he was, went to the police. That's all that case was.
Somebody who's going to be in the mob boss doesn't put himself in the position where he can be arrested for what is essentially a meaningless incident.
Then before it goes to trial, all this Castellano stuff happens, and all of a sudden, poor Romuald Pajsek is testifying against the #1 criminal in the country.
Pajsek had good reason to fear him when a terrifying story from Gotti's past surfaced in the press.
In 1980, Gotti's 12-year-old son was killed when he ran out in front of a neighbor's car.
His son ran out into the street, a next-door neighbor, not seeing him and not having done anything wrong, clearly an accident, killed the young man.
Media stories told how the distraught driver, John Favara, was menaced by Gotti's wife with a baseball bat when he tried to apologize. After that, Favara tried to flee the neighborhood.
He was selling his house and moving, and the day before he moved, he was kidnapped. And the story that was circulated was that Gotti himself cut him in half with a chainsaw. When that story hit the media, everybody was terrified of Gotti.
And having heard what happened to Favara, Pajsek had a sudden change of heart about testifying.
If I did go stand there and say that this is Mr. Gotti and this is Mr. Coletta, they assaulted me and robbed me, I'm not sure.
Pajsek's loss of memory spawned lurid headlines.
The brake linings on his car had been cut, and also he'd been threatened by people on the street.
So, you know, who's to blame him for the I for Gotti stuff?
Gotti walked free from court for the first time. He had defeated New York's combined forces of law and order. But less than 2 weeks later, in April 1986, he was back on trial. This time, it was the turn of the federal prosecutors. They were much more serious charges, and young assistant prosecutor John Gleason hoped they would hit Gotti with a maximum sentence of 20 years.
It was a racketeering case with what we call predicate acts, particular crimes that they committed as part of their membership in the Gambino family.
It should have been a humiliation for Gotti, but instead, he turned it into a photo opportunity.
The supermodel of mobsters, Gotti on magazine covers, newspaper headlines. One New York tabloid even followed his court suit, the cut, not the criminal, in a daily fashion column called Gotti's Garb. And every day at the courthouse, the Dapper Don plays to a sellout crowd.
I'm interested in the case because Gotti's kind of cool.
Gotti has been a cover boy. He's probably the first mob cover boy.
Gotti happily obliged his public with a stellar performance, nonchalant and apparently unconcerned by the trial going on around him.
Overnight, it became a media sensation because of the attraction to John Gotti.
Gotti even tried to assiduously cultivate members of the press.
He would have espresso with some brandy that he would pour in, or anisette, and he often invited the women reporters, never the male reporters, to share these drinks with him. So he opened doors for the women. He considered himself a new element in organized crime, and he was somebody who was untouchable.
Although he played the part of the Dapper Don, when the trial started, he fell back on the tactics of the street.
He was constantly berating me. I'd walk past him to go to sidebar, and he would say, "Your mother's a whore. You're a junkie."
Worse still, Gotti's lawyers proceeded to lay into the prosecutor's witnesses, who were all ex-mobsters.
Their records were even worse than Gotti's record. They were all murderers or horrendous, violent criminals. And at the same time, there was really no bugged evidence. There was no electronic eavesdropping. And lo and behold, Gotti was acquitted.
When the verdict was read today, gasps were heard in the courtroom. Gotti smiled, then glared over at the prosecutors and shouted, "Shame on them."
The jury's job was to decide whether or not the defendants were guilty. They did their job, and that is the end of that.
But what nobody knew at the time was that Gotti's victory had always been guaranteed.
Gotti had an insurance policy that he'd get a not guilty verdict. One of the jurors was bribed.
Later, juror George Pape would be found guilty of accepting $60,000 to withhold a guilty verdict. But at the time, the case was a disaster for the government.
It was a prosecutor's nightmare. It was a horror show. And John Gotti loved it. He enjoyed every minute of it. He knew he wasn't going to get convicted. He knew he had a free ride. He knew there was no downside for him in the trial, only an upside.
No, it's no problem.
No problem?
Gotti had made a mockery of the court again. But the attempt to try to convict him had a higher price. In the course of the trial, the prosecution had called 2 of Gotti's crew as witnesses, and in doing so revealed them as FBI informants. Two years after the trial, Willie Boy Johnson, a childhood friend of Gotti's, was found murdered. The other informant, Billy Batista, was never found.
Now this incensed the FBI because it was giving away what they considered 2 valuable informers in essentially what they considered a weak case. And it caused not just a dispute, but a rift.
As each law enforcement agency set their sights on Gotti, rifts and rivalries grew up between them, seriously hampering efforts to convict him.
It really was an indictment of law enforcement that for so many years we allowed them to gain strength, not cooperating with one another.
You had the FBI investigating him. You had the Queens DA's office investigating him. You had the Manhattan DA's office investigating him. You had something called the State Organized Crime Task Force investigating him. And they were actually, it's so comical, at one time, 3 of them had separate bugs in Gotti's Queens headquarters, the Bergen Fish and Hunt Club. I mean, it was a joke.
Next to try and nail Gotti was the New York State Organized Crime Task Force. Its boss, Ronald Goldstock, believed that one of his bugs had recorded Gotti ordering a shooting. And so, they became the 3rd organization to take on the Dapper Don.
John Gotti, alleged in the indictment to be the boss of the Gambino family, is now under indictment. This then is another in a long line of actions taken by state, local, and federal officials, which will inevitably change the face of organized crime.
In New York City this morning, the man police call the country's most powerful crime boss faces the possibility of life in prison for allegedly ordering the shooting of a union official.
That union official, John O'Connor, had smashed up a restaurant owned by a friend of Gotti's. In revenge, he was shot 4 times in the back. But survived. In the courtroom, witnesses testified that Gotti had ordered the shootings, and Goldstock was convinced that he had the evidence he needed on the tapes.
My sense was everybody in the courtroom who was watching the case and how it went in believed there was going to be a conviction.
But when the tapes were played in court, the terrible quality of the recordings placed serious doubt on the solidity of the case.
A jury brought in its verdict today on the man called the Dapper Don.
How say you with respect to defendant John Gotti? We find him not guilty.
We were stunned by the acquittal of Gotti. We did not believe that that could have happened.
Gotti walked free from court a 3rd time.
There was nothing to connect up Mr. Gotti from what happened. Zilch. I'm not saying he didn't do it. I simply had my doubts.
The government thinks you just say Mafia and you sit down on your backside and that's enough. It's not enough in America to say Mafia and sit down.
That night, as Gotti celebrated his victory, the media bestowed on him a new title, the Teflon Don, because no charges ever stuck.
We're all happy. We're all happy. Look at how good this is. The whole city should be happy.
There was actually street parties. People came out and cheered him. So here you have this cruel, vicious killer who's looked upon in some way as a hero. It's a terrifying and it's a terrible indictment, not just of the media, but also of this vicarious kick the public gets out of figures like John Gotti.
They wanted to see something like Vito Corleone or Jesse James. And he saw that. He milked it for all he could milk it for. He was cast as this Dapper Don, this Teflon Don. It was a gloss on him he certainly didn't deserve. He was just a thug.
Never before had a criminal appeared so powerful, so beyond the law. John Gotti had emerged triumphant from court 3 times in just 4 years. And the government were desperate that he be brought down.
A lot of people for the first time were saying, you'll never get him. He's a Teflon Don, he's untouchable.
But in 1989, after 4 years of painstaking surveillance work, the FBI were ready to make their move.
Our motto was patience and perseverance. Take all the time you want and just stick at it through thick or thin.
And their years of patience were beginning to pay off. Slowly, Mao's team made contact with a wide range of people connected to the Gambino family.
There's a lot of people out there that looked like they were regular, undiluted wise guys who were actually informants for the FBI.
The FBI learned that Gotti now liked to spend his time in the Ravenite Social Club on Mulberry Street in New York's Little Italy district. Mao ordered 24-hour surveillance of the club.
This is Little Italy. It's a very hard place to park cars, to conduct surveillance without being discovered.
The FBI covertly secured a lease for building with a direct view to the door of the Ravenite. They installed thousands of dollars of camera equipment, and studying hours of footage, they discovered something remarkable. Gotti was so overconfident that he was openly running his organization from the Ravenite Social Club.
He never seemed to understand he was running a secret organization, an underground criminal outfit. And he demands that at least once a week, his soldiers or his capos have to show up and kiss his ring like he's a pope.
They're not supposed to meet in public. They're supposed to be clandestine. They normally use safe houses. And from Monday through Friday, John Gotti would hold court at this club 5 nights a week.
And he gives Bruce Mao and the FBI incredible opportunities to unearth evidence that only a fool would hand over to them. They could photograph everybody going in and out of the Ravenite. They find out people they didn't know were in any way connected. Union leaders, or politicians, mobsters that were not known as Gambino members. Gotti hands them a who's who in the mob.
Good though the surveillance was, photos and video from outside the club would not make a case against Gotti. They needed to be able to hear what was being said inside. Mao called in the FBI's head of electronic surveillance, Jim Kallstrom, to get a device into the club.
I don't know if you've driven down Mulberry Street in New York. Very close environment. A lot of mobsters living there, coming and going. So to make an entry into a building covertly, you know, it's not simple. Very complicated.
Kallstrom's people are professional burglars. They're lockpicks. They can break through locks and go through alarms. They can break into safes. That's what they do. At the risk of retribution, they could be shot or killed going in there.
And there's never a time when the risk is zero. Never. Never a time.
Informants had told Mao's team that meetings took place at a table at the rear of the club.
They broke into the club, they got through the lock, they disabled the alarm system, and they were able to install a bug in the club.
With the bugs in place, the FBI thought that they were finally in a winning position. But they would discover it wasn't that simple.
You couldn't hear yourself talk in the Ravenite Social Club. Extremely noisy. Music played, all on purpose to stop any microphone.
And the tech guys went in several times. We put a bug below the table, we put a bug above the table, in the wall, and this had 5 bugs on this one table. We brought in tech guys from Washington to try to filter out all the background noise, but it just didn't work out.
They couldn't make out any words in the recordings, although it was possible to make out Gotti's voice. But there was a puzzle. It disappeared for long periods of time. So the team went back to the videotapes of the exterior of the club, looking for any sort of lead. It was then that they made a dramatic breakthrough by watching the door next to the club.
And here's really the power of surveillance. All of a sudden we started to figure out that there was a certain woman who would leave almost like clockwork when certain events took place.
Mao checked all their logs and realized that the woman left at the exact same time that Gotti's voice disappeared from the audio recordings. The FBI now discovered that there was an internal staircase leading from the club to the apartments above. And a background check on the tenants revealed why Gotti's voice was disappearing from their recordings.
Apartment 10 was occupied by the widow of a Gambino soldier by the name of Mike Sorelli. Gotti's minions would tell her, hey, we need to use your apartment for an hour or so. She'd go to the neighbor, watch TV. Gotti and his minions would go up there and have their administration meetings in her living room. So that was the break that we needed.
And I remember Bruce Mao calling me and saying we had the Eureka location.
But now, they were faced with a new problem. How to get into an apartment where somebody lived.
Whole nother ball game to get in there. Because you have a widow living there 24 hours, 7 days a week, and you have to get into her apartment.
Mao's team learned that Mrs. Sorelli will be going out of town for Thanksgiving. So in late November 1989, Kallstrom's team returned to Mulberry Street and placed a bug in her apartment.
And that's when the waiting started.
As weeks passed without results, Mao's team began to fear the worst. If Gotti suspected he had been bugged, the entire operation would be over.
You always wonder, did they discover something? Did they make the tech guys? Did they leave a little piece of wire behind? You know, has it been compromised?
Then, on a late November evening, the team observed Gotti and his henchmen enter the club, and they get ready to listen on the new bugs.
And sure enough, they opened the door for apartment number 10. And one thing we didn't know at the time was that John Gotti's deaf in one ear. So they couldn't whisper, they had to talk like we're talking now, loud and clear.
And right there is our microphone.
You tell this punk, me, John Gotti, you'll sever your motherfucking head off, you cocksucker.
John Gotti's voice was coming through loud and clear.
So here's Gotti, who warns everybody not to talk on the peril of death if they're ever heard picked up on eavesdropping. He goes up there and he's talking openly.
He would go over stuff over and over again.
Now listen to me, fella. Now listen. You're going to sever your motherfucking head off.
So it wasn't like, what did he say? If you didn't get it the first time, just wait a few minutes, you'd get it again.
John talks about whacking DB, Robert DiBernardo.
When DB got whacked, they told me a story. I was in jail. And I whacked him. I knew why it was being done. I done it anyway.
And John's classic line was, we're not sure he's a rat, but when in doubt, you kill him.
It was a clear admission to a murder.
It was what Mao had been waiting for several years. And Gotti handed it to him on a silver platter.
Where the fuck are we going? Where are we going?
All told, we monitored a total of 5 conversations, maybe 7.5 hours of tape all told. But they were like the top 40 hits.
And we knew we were off to the races. We knew we were going to have a really good case.
Where are we going? The light back. Be it an hour from now, be it tonight, or 100 years from now, I'm in jail. It's going to be a loss.
We had a great case. There was no longer a Mr. Cool sitting there. He was like a cornered animal. And I enjoyed every moment of it.
But before the trial even started, there would be one more twist. One of the FBI recordings that caught Gotti bad-mouthing his own underboss, Sammy Gravano, behind his back.
Sammy knew there was something bad in those tapes, not just for them getting convicted, but something bad in terms of his relationship with John Gotti. But he didn't know what it was.
Gravano now broke with Mafia law and approached the FBI without his boss's permission, demanding to hear the tapes.
Never forget as long as I live that, the playing of that December 12th tape in its entirety for Sammy.
It's basically an hour tirade against Sammy the Bull Gravano. He calls him the greed-eyed monster, how much he hates Sammy, thinks he's greedy. He talks about firing him.
Every fucking time I turn around, there's a new copy popping.
More importantly, the recordings had Gotti accusing Gravano of several killings.
And every time we got a partner and don't agree with us, we kill him. He kills me, okay.
Gravano was just red. He just wanted to burst. He was ready to explode. He was so upset about his loyal, his wonderful boss just bad-mouthing behind his back.
Sammy's looking down at the transcript and he takes his headphones and throws them down on the table and says, "Don't gloat, guys. Don't gloat."
And Gravano realized, why should I die in jail for a family I no longer believe in? I want to become a government witness.
At that moment, Gravano decided to break the Mafia's code of silence, the omerta, and turn against his boss and his entire Mafia family.
We never thought for a minute Sammy would flip. I thought John would flip before Sammy would flip. And I really didn't think there was any chance in the world that John would even think about flipping.
He told us about a lot of murders that he committed, which we didn't know about. I think there were a total of 19. He gave us more details as to the Castellano homicide, exactly how the whole thing went down. He was in the car with Gotti.
Gravano on side, what had already been a strong case was now airtight. Outside the court, it was a typical Gotti circus. He was still, after all, the Teflon Don.
It's not just average guys caught up in the Gotti spectacle. A who's who from Hollywood came to Brooklyn to take in the show.
This is one of the great dramas that's going on today.
The trial was really high drama because it was like the #1 media event here in New York, so the reporters every day filled up half the courtroom. We all sat with Gotti's minions. And the highlight was when Gravano testified for 9 days.
Today, Gravano explained how the two men plotted the 1985 murder of then-boss Paul Castellano and his driver, Tommy Bellotti. How they watched the hit go down outside a New York City steakhouse and then drove past the bullet-riddled bodies.
He didn't diminish his own criminality. He admitted to 16 murders. He admitted what he had to admit. He was a lights-out witness. I've been doing this now 27 years as a prosecutor and a judge. There was no better witness than Sammy Gravano. He killed them. And everybody in the courtroom knew that John Gotti was going to be convicted once Sammy Gravano testified, including John Gotti.
When the jury announced their verdict, Gotti's crew incited a riot outside the court.
I'm ashamed to say I'm an American in this country. That's what I'm ashamed of.
This is wrong what happened to him. What was he, a criminal?
Gotti had been found guilty on all charges in June 1992. Racketeering and 5 murders, including the Castellano hit.
It took the government 6 years to finally get the so-called Teflon Don, but this time it was the prosecution's turn to gloat. The legendary luck of John Gotti finally ran out.
The Teflon is gone, the Don is covered with Velcro, and every charge in the indictment stuck.
It was quite an occasion. And I still get emotional talking about it now.
For one member of the prosecution team in particular, it was a moment to be savored.
Come on.
You can imagine my feelings.
How does it feel to be the man who got Gotti?
Don't get him nervous now.
Well, this was my second trial. You know, I worked long and hard in that first case for a couple of years with a 7-month trial, only to have a juror get bought. We couldn't have been happier.
We were pleased. We were happy.
Are you smiling again?
Gotti was sentenced to life in jail, spending 23 hours of each day in solitary confinement. Gotti's indiscretions incriminated an entire tier of Gambino captains.
The FBI itself could not have handpicked a better candidate to be the head of one of the major mob families in New York than John Gotti.
Because of him, most of these captains were arrested, convicted, taken off the street. And they'd say, John and his friggin' big mouth, here I am. They hated this guy.
He was an absolute ruination for the Mafia. He was so inept, unqualified, and incompetent that he single-handedly wrecked the Gambino crime.